Hello YouTube, back again with a really cool camera, I think. I just got this. Actually, I have two of them now. This is a stereo Realist 3D camera. Two lenses, takes 2 frames per exposure, and if you've never played with three-dimensional stuff, you can go online and find lots and lots of information on 3D viewers, stereoscopes, anything that when looked through creates a three-dimensional image, and they're really cool and they're very effective. And I have a stereoscope with some cards and I love the effect, so I'm gonna take this into the field at some point. This may not even happen till spring, but I really wanted to show you this. Now, there's lots of videos out there about these cameras, done far well and far better than I could do them. I'm not going to do a maintenance, clean and lube thing on this. I'm going to link below a guy who already did a series of videos on cleaning these things up and using them and making them work right. And he did far better than I could do, so I'm going to leave that alone and just put the link in there. One thing I did want to show, I just wanted to show you this thing. This is cool, and it's solidly constructed. It's a metal body. It's got really rugged straps on it for your neck, or holders for your neck strap. It's very simple design. I've had this thing apart. I just finished cleaning it up. Very simple design, very direct, not hard to maintain. The only difference of opinion I have with the guy whose videos I'm going to link for you is lubrication. I oiled this. I oiled all the moving parts, like I've shown in other videos, with just a tiny dot of oil, and then wiping away the excess with Q-tips. That's the only difference I had with the guy who presented these videos. One of the things that I did want to bring, because I haven't seen it yet online, is these cameras, when new, took apparently an old school style of film that had a big long tail on it. Most films you get now have this little tail on it. It's my understanding that when this camera was built, most films had a much longer tail on it. So in most of the literature I've seen, it demonstrates putting the film in conventionally. You stick it in the slot here, you draw it across, but the tail extends to here. What is not generally seen is that the upper edge of the film, so you have to do, with the short tail, you have to do this manually. And to get you a better picture, there's a little thingamabob that you have to get that film underneath right here. Let me release that thing. Okay, let's try and get you some more light. So when you're loading the film into these, you have to start it, oops, not like that, like this. You have to get it going so that the sprockets line up with the sprocket holes, or the sprocket holes line up with the sprocket, and then you can drag it across to your take up and tuck it in accordingly. Having done that, then you just load it like any other 35mm. It does take 35mm film. Other than that, there's lots of resources online. They're all good resources. There's I'll link a couple of places where you can get different 3D stuff, not necessarily related to this camera, but just 3D goodies and doodads and thingamajigs and whatchamacallits. This camera is pretty well used. The other one I've got and I paid about the same amount of money, 30 bucks. This one, that included shipping, because this one was a little more beat up. My other one was $30 plus shipping, and I paid another 6 bucks, I think, for a reasonably good case. These were made in vast numbers over a 20 or 25 year period. This one happens to have been made in 53. So they're not hard to find, and buying one shouldn't bankrupt you. Also, I'm going to try and make my own stereo cards, the full-size stereo cards to go into a stereoscope. I'm going to try my hand at that, and we'll probably do a video on that at some point. But I wanted to show you that. I wanted to show you that thing with the film, so that if you have one and you want to try it, you don't just put the film down there and then wonder why it's not taking pictures. So there you have that short one today. Like I said, lots of resources available online that I cannot do better. So there you have it, a great piece of old school stereo camera stuff, and I think it's awesome. So until next time. Okay, I feel like I ran through that video, giving not much useful information for 6 minutes of watching time. So I guess what I'll do here is do a quick load and shoot run through, so that anybody who's curious can at least see how it operates. So here's your camera. Focus is here. Your shutter button is here. You have a button here for advance and rewind. This is your counter. You got 2 windows on the back. This one is for framing. This is your split image focusing. You have lens cover, and your 2 photo lenses work together like that. And along here are your f-stops, and on this side gives you it's a little tough to say, but I would say your depth of field. I'm not exactly sure what all that is. It looks like depth of field anyhow. And this ring in here is your shutter speed, from timed all the way to a 150th of a second. You have 2 windows here for your viewing, which are connected with these, so they go from the back and the center to the outside and the front. And one of my beefs with this particular camera, incidentally, there were a lot of companies that made these. This is just one. It was one of the more numerous cameras, and easy to come by. Anyhow, one of the things you have to be aware of when you're using this camera is when you're holding it, that your fingers aren't covering up one window or the other, because they both have to be exposed. And this is your shutter release. And also right here on the top is a little window where once you've fired off a frame, it'll show a red dot there. Now when you're focusing, you turn the knob like so. You'll notice that the lenses do not move. You won't be able to see it in this, but instead of the lens moving, the back, I don't even know what you would call this, the back of the camera moves. And as you turn this knob, you might be able to see it. The whole back side of the camera where the film travels moves in and out. So with that in mind, we take our roll of film that does not have a big long leader and put it under the little gizmo, and we drag it through, like I said, drag it through like that. this button here releases your catch so that you can actually drag that through there. And you turn your wind around so you can get the tail in there. Press that so you can tense it up. Pull up your rewind button. And that should do it. So, film's in. Put the back on. Lock it. Then you're going to need to advance through a couple of frames. As you would with any camera. Then you can set your counter, which is manual, around to your, well, it's on 2, but to 1. Open it up. Look through this one to frame it. Look through this one to focus. Right here, keeping your fingers out of the way of the windows. And having done that, you just fire off the button. And nothing happens because you did it wrong. You have to cock the shutter. I've only done this a handful of times, so if this looks herky-jerky and awkward, it's only because it is. So, film's loaded, shutter's cocked. There goes one shot. There's your red dot telling you that you fired one off. Press the button. Advance it again. Cock the shutter. And there goes another frame. And it's on the film, it's going to be 2 frames, 2 frames, 2 frames. They're not going to be side by side, they're going to be separated by a couple of other frames. And that is pretty much all there is to it. Oh, cock the shutter. The placement of all the controls is different than on any other camera I've used. So there's a rhythm to it, and you know, a certain amount you have to grow accustomed to it to a certain degree. And if you want to do a double exposure, this is your button for that. So having already shot off a frame, you can pull this out and then cock the shutter and do a second exposure. And you can keep right on shooting until you put that button back in, and then you can no longer shoot on that frame. So press the button, advance it, cock the shutter, focus, and fire. And that is that. And then to remove the film, okay, don't open up the back. You turn this, little R, little A, you turn this to the little R, just like that, and then that releases all the little gears and doodads in the back. It also counts backwards. So that's what I wanted to show you. This is a test roll of film, so I don't want it to completely rewind. So there's your bum's rush basic description on how this thing does what it does. Not terribly complicated, but does take a certain amount of getting used to because it is different than anything else you are ever going to shoot. Alright, now for real.